Let's take a look at the Continental Free Trade Area. What does it mean for the 26 countries that's currently involved, and it will cover the Eastern and Southern Africa as such?
First, it will be to accommodate speed mobility of goods and services. Mm-hmm. The cost to which goods get delayed due to customs duty issues, due to poor infrastructure, is effectively very expensive to the continent. Mm-hmm. Thirdly, we need to find a way to make sure that we harmonize the monetary issues that comes through trade. So if they were to implement a free trade zone, even if it is by some region like SADC and then the East African community, when they put into house their own free trade understanding of all that it takes to run it, it will be easier to harmonize, and you can be assured it will be a huge impact to economic growth rate. Mm-hmm. You know, I teach at VETS for the last School of Business Economics for the last 23 years, and what I find strange is that we don't have a comprehensive understanding of what literally accelerates economic growth rate. And one of the which is velocity of either money or the speed to which you and I move from here to Ethiopia and back, from when you can get wool sweater from Lesotho without going probably 2-3 days due to custom issues. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, it was proposed 5 years ago by the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA, and the East Africa Community, the EAC, and the SADC region. Why did it take so long?
It takes so long because over time you realize that the disparity in economic performance. We have some countries with so much potential, but they are so poor. If you look like a country like DRC, one of the most resourceful, the per capita GDP is less than $120. You look like a country like Botswana, the per capita GDP is in excess of $5,000. Now, the issue is, if you allow free trade, there will be more human movement across from where the resources are badly managed to where resources are well managed. And you can understand that. You cannot have free trade without free mobility of people. Yeah. So I think they are dealing with that, and it's not easy. Thirdly, let's call a spade, and I like to put it this way. It's the time now we are seeing, over the last 50 years, the African continent waking up to stand up and say, listen, the days are gone for us to be literally guided from the policy coming from the World Bank or the IMF or from the donors. Mm-hmm. And that has taken very long to relinquish, because the center of interest by those communities, may they be the World Bank, may they be the IMF, mm-hmm. are driven by the leading shareholders. Mm-hmm. So now we are seeing there is an impetus from the African leadership, particularly also the youth, saying, the days are off when we have to be always singing to the garrulous of investors and investment drivers, mm-hmm. and the donors, and the World Bank, in my view, who have done very little to improve the status quo in the continent.
So now the calls are there for it to make it work for the Tripartite Free Trade Area. Is this maybe now the point in time where we will move into that inter-Africa trade with these countries? We'll talk first about the first 26 countries.
I would say I wish it is.
Yes.
And I pray it should happen. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I would say with certainty it's with the time.
Implementation is always a problem, isn't it?
Agreed.
Now, we're talking only about the 26 countries, but we are foreseeing, or the SADC Summit is foreseeing a continental free trade area. How possible is that? By 2017, I might add.
Look, I travel a lot. Mm-hmm. I just arrived from Nairobi. I'll be in Ghana next week, and I'm dealing with very senior people discussing these issues. Let me tell you, people are serious now. Mm-hmm. We know why. First, there is a huge growth in IT. You know, everything now can be done in-house. You can be able to manage whatever you are doing through your laptop or through the computer. Mm-hmm. So that enhances. What I worry is, we have the infrastructure to do the same. But if you look at the thrust of the SADC conference now, they are saying we need highly integrated industrial policy. And that, to me, that's what I heard all this summit is talking about. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? It means let's try to be able to do what we call it spatial development initiative, that makes sure that each member state is allowed to develop an industrial base, that which they have comparative advantage, rather than buying them from probably West South Africa, become only the ones selling to them. There should be mutual reciprocal trade. So the debate is good. Whether they have the money and the power, that's another question.
Now, can the FTA contribute significantly to sustainable economic growth, not just in Africa, but beyond that? Because we are looking at the entire continent participating in the FTA in 2017, and the feasibility of that in 2 years' time, 2.5 years' time?
It's too ambitious, agreed. But it's better to have something that you work towards to, rather than to have talk shop. In actual fact, they call it showtime. But I think I have a feeling with what I'm seeing in Nigeria, with what I'm seeing in Eastern Africa, with what I'm also seeing happening here with their with our national development plan. It seems like in the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to have a more harmonious industrial approach. But take it this way, nothing is going to take place effectively if it's not owned by the people. This time, I think the people own it, and that's where I think it's going to be able to work.
Now, some have suggested that, rather than continue to push for continental-wide agreements, one should rather focus and shift that focus to industries that is linked internally in your country. What can be done to promote trade and the creation of inter-industry linkages rather than these inactionable plans that they call it? Do you agree with that?
I agree. I agree in the sense that you have to, first of all, take advantage of what you have and what you control. Look, if you look at what you are watching now, there's so much of crude oil that it looks like, is it agriculture now? There is no African country that is not claiming to have some access to crude oil. From Namibia to Botswana to Kenya to Uganda to Tanzania, Guinea, you name it. So each one of them needs to manage that resource very strongly. Trust me, if this is true, it will be easier then to try to now to say, I can improve what we are doing. It's owned by our people. Now we have the money. The bottom line, do we have the money to do what we want to do? The answer is the resources we are seeing could be able to surprise the world, and therefore we will have the resources.
We have the resources, but we don't have the expertise.
I would argue that I had a debate yesterday with some very brilliant businessmen, and I told them, listen, to them, a lot of people are saying the day is to bring investors, but we have had these investors for 100 years, and the money went to develop Europe. The money went to develop the United States. We saying, we are economists, smart enough to know we can now do in-house. If I tell you what I see young people doing, developing pharmaceutical factory from nowhere to compete in the world, we are going somewhere. But we tend to be always negating. I'm saying, I see the impacts the youth are doing, I see the commitment the youth have, and I also see the pride of being able to say, I'm part of the change. Critical to this is that we are also seeing institutional framework that said to support democratic dispensation with respect of African human rights rather than global accord. And to me, those are the things that we did not have for many years.
Let's talk about another issue of influence, international influences on our economies in Africa. Earlier we reported on Moody's. They are moody again. They downgraded South African banks. What do you make of the downgrading of four major banks in South Africa?
I think, with all due respect, we got to be concerned. But to what extent? Listen, the moment the resources are found to be, money looks where the money can make money. In other words, there is no way you can say that because now Namibia has so much offshore oil, but you downgrade them by a certain number, people are not going to invest, number one. Number two, maybe I'm an economist who defeats the odd. It doesn't matter, because we are internally going to develop. Listen to this. All economies are divided into two, external part and internal part. Yes. Internal part of the economy is 70–80%. The external part is 20%. These Moody's address the 20% without addressing the 80%. Guess what? I'm an economist who says, let me concentrate on where the power is, because the internal part, which is bigger, is what you and I as South Africa need to worry very much about.
What is going to be the impact, though, of the downgrades on the banks in South Africa?
A little bit, it's not going to make it easier to look for money externally. In other words, it will be very difficult for people who believe in this Moody's rating to be able to come and give us the money the way they thought. But listen, if they downgraded Russia for so many years. Today, everybody is in Russia looking for money. They downgraded Brazil for so many years. Today, everybody is going there. To me, These are also employed people looking for jobs. They have to give some satisfaction.
They have to be kept busy. But what about the bank's clients?
Of course, the bank's clients, as in, of course, you see now, the bigger client in the bank are the people who run the pension fund, the people who are doing a lot of big money transactions. Those are the ones the Moody's worry about. In the end, we're going to be able to say, is there any way we can be able to generate internal growth and create our strong internal domestic banking system that can be able to bring us to where we are. Of course, one would argue the best example is African Bank. Anybody knew, I knew that. I knew as 4 years ago that bank is going to fail. It was not sustainable, it's going to fail. Now it has a ripple effect on the other banks. That's what we are seeing, because some of these banks had also invested in this institution. We need to get people to understand it's not business as usual. You can't be exploiting the poor and expect the bank to run for the next 30, 40 years. It was bound to fail. It is going to hit us. But we are learning, and we are learning. How long we're going to learn, that's the question.
Well, thank you so much once again for joining us here on AM News.
Most welcome. Bye.
That was Economist Mr. Peter Karungu here in studio with us, chatting to us about SADC and, of course, the downgrade.